Alan Quinlan is with us. Alan, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How are you?
I've been saying this for months and months and months and years and years and years. I think a European Super League for rugby is exactly the way to go. 32 teams, own local conferences, plenty of derbies, plenty of big games, scrap everything else, let's go. Who says no?
I don't know. Nobody says no, but we have a European competition that's working pretty well as it stands. But you want to bring in more teams to, do you?
Well, I mean, if you can add those South African teams into a 32-team season, that would be amazing.
Well, we've expanded one this year, 24, so bringing 4 more in is 28. So we have to find 4 more, Ger, to get to 32. But might bring in the New Zealanders and Australians as well and have a global competition. But who knows? With the Rainbow Cup started at the weekend, and I was pleasantly surprised at how the games went and the type of rugby we saw, to be honest.
Well, let's start with the Munster game. It's difficult to know what this means from a long-term perspective, and it might just mean that they won that game and there's no long-term repercussions for either team, but it might not. Who knows? The psychological barrier that Munster had against Leinster won't be there the next time. We won't be able to say it's 6 in a row since Munster have managed to beat this Leinster team. How important was that?
Really important. I think it was more important that they won comprehensively. I suppose first and foremost to win the game. But if they were kind of on a hiding to nothing, if they won the game by a narrow margin, I think they still would have been criticised, which could be unfair. But given the teams that were selected, I see there was a bit of criticism kind of when the teams were announced on Friday that Munster kind of went full strength and they weren't playing some of the young players, but there was a couple of them injured. Thomas Ahern was injured. It would have been nice to see him involved, but he wasn't available. I think there needed to be a desperation. Munster needed to stop this rot. They've played 5 times in 8 months now, and Leinster won, all of those games bar the weekend. So I think it was just really important psychologically to get a result. And I think you look at the reaction, the team that Leinster selected, and I think it's very understandable given where they're going to be this weekend against La Rochelle and what's the most important thing for them. They have a lot of strength and depth, I think, and coupled with the fact that Munster just had a desperation and an aggression about them at the weekend, that they just had to get a result no matter what. It was unthinkable that Munster would lose that game. I think there would have been serious ramifications would have come out after that if that happened. But look, I think there's a lot of regret in the players after the Pro 14 final. And, sometimes it's what's going on in your head. It's the psychological approach. It's having that real fear. And some of that was diluted, I suppose, with lots of people saying that Munster would win that Pro 14. But that's a couple of weeks back. So look, at the end of the day, I think they just have to stop the rot, really, win a match against Leinster and just move on. And it puts them in a very strong position now. If they win their next 4/5 games, we don't know how many games they're going to have. We know there's three rounds, and then there's 2 other games that Munster themselves know have been confirmed. It looks like, they were supposed to play the Stormers in round 6, which would have been the 6th game. So I don't know. We still don't know what's going to happen. Is it going to be 5 games or 6 games and then a final? But you think beating the strongest team in it, albeit with a weakened side, they're in a very strong position now to maybe go to a final.
It does paint the last couple of weeks in a slightly different light, Alan, doesn't it? Because I think there was real regret after the Toulouse game because Munster were so good in that game, where you kind of felt that against weaker opposition they might have got to the next round of Europe, and if they put in that performance against Leinster they might have won the Pro 14. So there was a bit of confusion as to where Munster really were, what was the true Munster. So winning on Saturday probably moves the argument towards the fact that actually that performance against Toulouse was closer to what we do expect from Munster.
Yeah, look, there's still lots of issues as regards ball retention and mistakes from both sides. The conditions are really good. I think there was a lot of turnovers, a lot of knock-ons. It was very competitive. But yeah, I think the glass is more half full with Munster, and there's definitely potential to get better. I think their attack needs to, be expanded a little bit more, for sure. And in the way they play, and have kind of more options, particularly during the season when there's weather conditions, all that kind of stuff. And I would have liked to see the back three get more ball in open field and stuff like that. But there's definitely plenty of positives there that they can take away. And as I said, it's my biggest fear on Friday or before this game would have been, a poor performance, and losing the game again. It kind of adds more pressure onto the whole environment there, and from a psychological point of view, it's very important to get a result. So they're the next strongest team to Leinster in Ireland, and they're probably in the top 4 or 5 in Europe. And as you say, Toulouse were, they're a fantastic side, and they're potential winners of this competition. I think they will be in a final. Small margins in that game for Munster, and it could have been different. I think the one that lingers probably is the Leinster one, because they didn't play at all. I think they played very well and at times against Toulouse and showed their potential. But they have to add to that, and this is a competition now that they can finish on a high, and they can hopefully get a trophy, because people can downgrade the Rainbow Cup, and it doesn't excite everybody, and we're all kind of skeptical about where it'll go. But for them, if they can get their hands on a trophy and build something in the next six to 8 weeks, and finish on a high, it'd be a real positive for them, particularly going into pre-season, and try and integrate some more young players into the group, and start with optimism next year again, and get RG Snyman back, and Thomas Ahern, and some of the younger players that we've been talking about all year, and get them into the group and see where it takes them.
What's your instinct on whether or not the whole coaching ticket will be back next year? At the moment, do you feel like we will still have the whole ticket intact?
Yeah, well, I'm not hearing anything different, and I think I would be of the opinion that they should stay intact. I think they have to figure it out themselves where they're going. At the end of last season, or even at the conclusion of the season, kind of, which immediately overlapped into a new season last September. I think they finished on a negative there in that loss to Leinster in the and probably the manner of the performance again. And there was a fair bit of optimism with Dialinde and Snyman coming in, and like I say, some new young players who would energise the group a bit more and stake a claim for positions. We've seen a transition in the way they've played this year, and we've seen some positive glimpses of more expansion in the attack and the overall attack when they get into phase play and stuff like that, and attack from more of an expansive approach from forwards as well, trying to run better lines, giving little offloads, not just one out runners that we saw a lot, and kicking the ball. I still think, of course, there's the accuracy of the kicks at times need to be better. All teams do kick a lot. So I think they will stay intact. And with Roundtree, Larkham, they're very, very experienced coaches who've been working with a lot of big teams in the last number of years. They were a great coup for Munster. But I do think that, for next season, they've got to win a couple of these big matches, and getting to semi-finals and finals is fine, but I think there will be a real need to get a trophy next year. It's difficult for Johan van Graan now, because he's going into his last year, and there'll be uncertainty around whether his contract is extended or not. But at the moment, I think it's a collective effort that, they really need to make sure that there's more game plans in the bag next year. And that's stuff they've been trying to develop this year. Sometimes it's down to personnel, sometimes it's down to coaching, but I think they deserve another crack at it at the start of next season, given that they're all going to be under contract, and we don't see coaches get sacked in rugby here. I think they do deserve another crack at it, and I'd be optimistic that they can take that next step up. Fans want to see it. I think there is a frustration in Munster that they haven't won a trophy in 10 years, and then your biggest rivals are setting the bar pretty high, and it's difficult chasing them down given the playing numbers and all that kind of stuff, and the way they've produced some incredible players in the last 4 or 5 years who've gone on straight. Some of them have jumped straight into the national side. So Munster is a big club, and there's a demand to try and win, and that pressure will always be there. So I think they will stay intact.
I'm excited by what they're going to do next season with a fully fit, fingers crossed, Carbery there, as well as all of the other stuff. It's like they finally have their first choice out half, and a bunch of players are playing well. The investments that they've made will finally all come to fruition at the same time. So you'll see Dialende fully settled. You'll see Snyman back fit. There's more depth in the second row coming, which all of a sudden means that the bench is better. It just, trying to overturn a dynasty type team like Leinster requires long-term planning and vision, and another change in the coaching ticket I think is completely the wrong thing to do. So I really hope that they are back next year.
Ger, I think they have good players. I do think they need to develop the way they play more and execute more. And I think there's a lot of
are there not signs of that though? Do you not see?
Definitely. That's what I'm saying. But I think they need to really be ambitious now and take that to the next level, and really, be a team that can play off the cuff rugby as well, and move the ball and just a bit more freedom in attack. I think, look, under Rassi, I think it was probably a seed set of pressure, kicking game, directness, holding on to the ball, trying to use your physicality to beat teams, all that kind of stuff will get you so far. But you need that little bit of finesse. And I think they realise that now, and I think they are trying to be more expansive. It's hard to change habits straight away, but I think there is a need for that to happen. And look, if they need to see that themselves, I'm sure they do see it. And I think, we've seen plenty of that this year.
I thought in the Toulouse game you were seeing bits, but I even think
definitely. Clermont as well, the game away from home, I thought the way they attacked after the shock of being well behind after 20 minutes was brilliant. And that's something they probably weren't able to do before. So there's plenty of ability there, but they've just got to build on that now and make sure that they become more consistent in that. And they're not, whether they like it or not, whether they're not labelled, and they need to change the label themselves of a side that are pretty direct and kick a lot. And of course, you need to kick lots in matches, given weather conditions, all that kind of stuff. So, that's the continuous improvement that's needed in the attack.
Do you want to see Carbery go on a summer tour with Ireland this year?
Yeah, of course. I think, look, he's I expected him to kind of hit the ground running, which is unfair. And I think he's when you come back, Gerald, like he did and had a few Pro 14 games, eased his way back in, and then suddenly you're into Leinster and Toulouse. It's very difficult. They were always games that Munster were potentially going to lose. There wasn't, on paper, they were going to be very, very difficult games for any side, and they didn't work out great for him. I think we saw glimpses against Toulouse of his ability, his natural ability, and that freedom. So he is vital to him. And to be out for 14 months, it is a bit unfair to expect someone to come back and hit the ground running. So I would love to see him go on a summer tour, and I think, if he gets the right quality ball and gets his confidence back up and gets his body in shape, and it takes time, it would be nice to see him go on tour, because I think his talent is undoubted.
Let's talk a little bit about La Rochelle against Leinster. Obviously, La Rochelle, that coaching ticket is breaking up. We know what's happening. John O'Gibbs is going to Claremont, but obviously it'd be amazing for him to sign off, and seems like that's a very well bonded team and a well bonded coaching ticket from the outside anyway. You can never know exactly what's going on, but there's a lot of motivation there for La Rochelle. The quality of rugby they're playing is excellent. The strength and depth they have is and the type of game they play as well is the type of game that could easily cause Leinster difficulties. Leinster are favourites with the bookmakers, and I'm very uncomfortable with that, I have to say, this weekend. I think this is essentially a 50-50 game.
It is, yeah. I think they're a very strong, powerful side, La Rochelle. I think, can they keep that intensity going for 80 minutes, which we know Leinster, that's kind of the template. That's the level they're at when they get to this stage of Europe. It's a very difficult game for them, and it obviously has the subplots of John O'Gibbs and Ronan O'Gara. Added kind of excitement for people on the outside. They'll be very focused, I think, and they'll be fresh and well rested, confident of what they did in Exeter. And it is a factor. There is no doubt about it. You're going to France to play them with no crowd. It takes away that home advantage a little bit. So Leinster being favourites is very understandable, and I think that's where the game. I think overall, I think the game is about that intensity over 80 minutes, and can La Rochelle kind of keep that level very high. I think Will Skelton would be someone that obviously played against Leinster many times and would have been central to that defeat that they had in 2019 in Newcastle, where they beat Leinster, and he was a colossus that day. Defensively, the way he tackled guys back over the gain line and stopped Leinster at source. So I would be amazed if Rog wasn't having chats with him and they weren't looking back at some of that stuff. But it's easy watching that, and you've got to go out and do it and deliver and have a work ethic and a desire for 80 minutes. And Rog and John O'Gibbs will know that themselves. So they're a very dangerous side who have really good wingers who. Raymond Rule is a fantastic player, a great finisher. Boffia in the centre can be just incredible, devastating at the breakdown, great ball carrier as well. Ihaya West is a concern for La Rochelle, whether he plays or not. I think they have a problem at out half. So it's an intriguing game. But you just think Leinster, as I said, justifiably favourites given the experience they have and the way they played in that quarter final over in Exeter.
Are there any implications for the way Leinster played on Saturday night for the game next weekend, or do you just immediately consign that to the dustbin and go, it was irrelevant in the context of this game this weekend?
My only concern would be that they have one game played in about 4 or 5 weeks, Leinster's first team. That's the concern. So they didn't play too long. They played Exeter, no games last week. Then they played second stroke, third stroke team this week. If Leinster lose the game, that could be a conversation to be had. But there's no reason to believe that it will affect them in a negative way. I think there's plenty of quality there, and they've shown us that they can just turn that switch on and get to a level that's that gets the job done. I'm sure they'll have a lot of and I think part of the thinking last week would have been take away the team that's going to play against La Rochelle and prepare them. I'd be amazed if they weren't kind of working on stuff last week as a group. They'll be very, very fresh going into the game. They'll be obviously hoping Johnny Sexton is back. Caelan Doris would have been huge for him if he was back, but obviously him picking up the calf injury before the game may not put him back in a starting position. But I don't think that's an issue because their back row have been fantastic. So it just depends whether if La Rochelle start the game well and get into a good position and get their confidence up, and Leinster then, it's that spark that we know they have, and it's for them not expecting it to happen. They've got to make it happen. So they'll be very fresh, but sometimes that little bit of match practice may be a factor, and we'll see next week. As I said, if La Rochelle win the game, maybe it's something that a conversation might be had about that situation.
Okay, the Connacht-Ulster game on Friday night was one of those games where Neil Tracy was saying a little bit earlier on, Ulster were leading the game, they were deep in Connacht territory, it looked like the game was over, and then Connacht managed to go the length of the field and use a captain's challenge and score a try to win the match. It's the type of thing that would have happened to Connacht over the last number of years, since Pat Lam left, essentially. But under Andy Friend, that team has developed an identity and a relentlessness and a resilience that you really have to think. It feels like something's brewing in Connacht, and they're in as good a position as they've been since Pat Lam actually won the league for them.
Yeah, it was a brilliant game. First and foremost, I thought their character and the reaction to the try that they conceded with when Michael Lowry makes the break and puts Ulster back in front again. I thought Ulster probably looked a better side in the first half. You just had a sense that they would get the result and win, and it would go according to script. But the one thing about Connacht, as you say, under Andy Friend, is they just have the way they played and the pace they play the game at, and their attitude around attack is just. But they've got to play like that, Ger. You know, they've got to play like that, and I think that's why he's Andy. They can't simply outmuscle. It's probably against what he would do anyway, and believe in outmuscle a team up front and try and kick the ball a lot. They want to play, and I thought there was 20 minutes in the second half there where I was in awe at the tempo, the pace, the energy, the commitment at the breakdown, the relentlessness of Connacht, which was incredibly impressive. And they got the tries. They put themselves in front. Quinlan Blade was sensational. It was great to see Papali'i coming on, give him a real focal point in attack, made some great breaks, big carries, big hits. And just the reaction at the end, I think I was sceptical enough about the captain's challenge, how all that stuff would work. Would it slow games down? But it was a perfectly legitimate challenge at the end where the ball was stripped by Michael Lowry from right at the end of the game. They got the penalty, they kicked to the corner, and then they get the winning try. It's just sensational. I think it was brilliant to see, and the excitement, and they deserved it. It wasn't one that they kind of stole. I think their physicality in the second half was incredibly impressive, and it was a brilliant win for them.
Brilliant win as well in terms of the actual result. Less so maybe about the performance from the Ireland game against Italy in the final game of the Six Nations. I know rugby is absolutely in love with the whole notion of let's get the performance first and the result will look after itself. That wasn't really the case here. That team desperately needed a win for all sorts of reasons. Not least is the fact that they can't allow Italy to suddenly think that they're equals in this, because World Cup qualification looming large and points and all that kind of stuff. A win was all they needed to do, and they did it. And, we had Stacey on earlier on, and she was saying the best part about this is our performance will improve. So it wasn't a great game. The quality, the pressure seemed to get to both teams in terms of handing errors and knock-ons and all that kind of stuff. But that, I guess, in a way, even when you're playing bad, getting the results, that's the hallmark of a team who's learning and evolving.
I think they can take a lot out of the tournament. Obviously, if we're being critical and go down to the nuts and bolts of the accuracy and the execution, you can find loads of faults. But a bit like Munster trying to win in the RDS, this was a must-win game to lay down a marker for those World Cup qualifiers. No matter how many training sessions you have there, and that's the point I was kind of making about the Leinster having one game with the first team in 4 or 5 weeks going into this La Rochelle game. Sometimes you can get a bit rusty, and nothing beats matches. And I think to have 20 training sessions before the tournament for the women, of course you can work on things and you can put systems in place and things you want to do, but you're not allowed to do that all the time when you go out in the field, and you've got to earn the right to do it with the opposition trying to smash you and unsettle you and stuff like that. So mixed bag throughout the tournament with performances, but to win 2 out of 3 is exactly what they needed. They need to finish next in line to France and England, and I think that's the best they could hope for. Of course, they would have loved to be more competitive on the scoreline, closer against France, and there was optimism going into that game. So they would have learned a lot, but I think the commitments and the desire and the effort level was very, very impressive throughout the whole tournament. And I think they deserve a lot of credit for you know, dealing with the big disappointments and frustration after that France game. And defensively, they were so good on Saturday against a very physical Italian side, but lots of turnovers, lots of mistakes from both sides. And sometimes that's down to pressure and the competitiveness. But overall, I think they can be very, very pleased. There's a few girls who've been integrated from the 7 series. Adam Griggs will hope to keep them for World Cup qualifiers. I think we don't know when they're happening. It's been touted as September. But overall, I think they can be very, very pleased. And you saw the excitement and the happiness at the end of the game, which was lovely to see. I think I felt so sorry from the week before because they were the architects of their own downfall a lot of the time with the scores that France punished them for. But, you know, to see what it meant to them on Saturday was really, really pleasing. And it was a great way for them to finish. There's loads, of course, as Stacey Flood was saying, that they can work on and get better on. But it's very unfair and it's hard when you're trying to get better when you've no matches. You know, they hadn't played since October. So to get up to that next level, you need matches. And that's the frustrating thing for them now. They don't have matches. They don't know when they play again.
Yeah.
And it's difficult. So
even the club game that Owen was asking about too. So, no
certainty around that. But look, a great way for them to finish. And look, who cares about the performance? At this stage, it was about the results. And they did that job. Won by 20 points on Saturday. And that was great to see.
Alan, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Cheers, lads.
Alan Quinlan giving his thoughts there on several of the big stories from the week, and obviously we'll hear from Alan again on Friday ahead of Leinster against La Rochelle in the semi-final of the European Champions Cup, a game of course you can hear live here on Off the Ball. Now it is 16 minutes past 9. You're watching OTB AM, brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Plenty still to come this hour on OTB AM. We're back after these with the Gillette Performance Rankings.